Okay, this is if you missed the Bill of Rights. So this is cards 311 through 3 1, I should say, through 311. And why does it start at 311? Well, that way the numbers are in order. So Amendment 1 is card 3.1, Amendment 2 is card 3.2, and that was a critique I got last year. So I listened to student feedback, and I'm going to create the correct order. So if you need to pause at any time to get the card, then by all means pause so you can get the card. But listen, because I'm going to give you some hooks, some of which are maybe really, really good, and some of which frankly are pretty terrible. But sometimes being really terrible is actually memorable, so that might actually be of benefit to you. So there you go. All right, Bill of Rights. First off, it's going to be 311, so that way each amendment lines up with the number appropriately. So Bill of Rights, it's the first 10 amendments. It was added to get anti-federalist support. It was to protect individual rights and liberty from the federal government. So this isn't telling you what your rights are. It's telling the federal government what it cannot violate. That's really clear. These are what we would call negative rights, where it's a negative. It's telling the government, you can't mess with these things. You federal government, you can't mess with these things. Technically, the states could mess with these rights, but eventually the Bill of Rights will be applied to the states through the 14th Amendment. We'll talk about that. It's a term that we'll use called selective incorporation. And just know that today courts are continually interpreting and balancing liberty, your freedoms, versus order that we need in society so there's no chaos. All right, awesome. Go ahead and pause and then copy these right now. I'm moving on. All right, First Amendment. Again, I think I would take a moment and listen to my commentary first, then go ahead and write. So just do it that way, listen, and then do that. So, First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Okay, so they can't establish a religion and force you to go to it, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, meaning they can't prohibit you freely exercising your religion, which means you go to whatever church you want, or you don't go to any church at all, or abridging, meaning like stopping the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble, I should say, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So there's the rights of the First Amendment. Um, when you look at the first, it looks like you get like a one there, and then if you make it in, if you just add a couple lines, it becomes an F. And so we go First Amendment freedoms, First Amendment freedoms. So first freedoms, first freedoms, first freedoms, and how many are there? 5. So we can remember a hook with first 5 freedoms, first 5 freedoms. So if you can remember that hook, that really helps. All right, and here's the 5 freedoms: speech, religion, press, assembly, petition. Religion has 2 clauses, so I would separate those out by putting in parentheses. It's free exercise clause and the establishment clause. So separate those out. All right, go ahead and pause right now so that way you can write them down because I'm moving on. All right, Second Amendment is really simple. Most people know what this is. We debate this all the time, like how far do your Second Amendment rights go? All right, so flip over. It's a right to bear arms. Done. The controversial part of this, if you're looking at it, a well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, for most of our history, um, the states had the right to regulate, gun rights. I mean, there was no question about it. They did, and they did in some cases fairly significantly. Unfortunately, also did it on a way that was racially imbalanced, where African American citizens couldn't bear arms in the South, and white people only could, which is problematic when you have the KKK running around lynching people. But also, the idea of owning a weapon, a well-regulated militia. The militia was nothing more than a group of dudes with guns. I mean, that's all it really was. So this has been mostly in our history considered an individual right, but there is debate over that. Although the Supreme Court has, for the most part, uh, agreed that it's an individual right. Whether or not you can own, a bazooka or a tank, and there are cases where you can actually. That's where people kind of get into the debate. Cool. Done with this one. Third Amendment. I have a little hook for this one. It's one that everyone forgets because it's never been adjudicated at the Supreme Court. There's never been a Supreme Court case on the Third Amendment. There was one that cut up to appeal, and they didn't give writ of certiorari. All right, so Third Amendment. Think of this: three soldiers have two guns. Three soldiers, Third Amendment has to do with soldiers. Two guns, two Second Amendment has to do with right to bear arms. So three soldiers can't quarter in homes. Second, right to bear arms. So three soldiers, two guns. Three soldiers, two guns. Three soldiers, two guns. Just remember, you think third soldiers, two guns. Three soldiers, two guns. All right, backside. No quartering or sleeping, living in the home in times of peace. Notice that it does say that in a time of war, it is a manner prescribed by law, meaning Congress can actually pass a law that says a soldier can be in your house. So, like Ulysses S. Grant during the Civil War, like he took over people's houses, and that was prescribed by law during time of war. That can happen. All right, cool. That's the Third Amendment done. Fourth Amendment. Hook for this one. It's not great, but if you can remember this, the saying, it's at least something, and that is that you must have a warrant for a search of my house. For a search of my house. I know it's kind of dumb, but a student came up with it. So if you don't like it, it's their fault. If you like it, I'll take credit. I use it. All right. So you must have a warrant for a search of my house. So you must go to a judge, get a warrant before you can go into a house. The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So the government can't come into your house and search for something and just randomly look. They have to have a warrant that says exactly what's going to be grabbed. Right. So protected from unreasonable search and seizures, no warrant without probable cause. By the way, the implications of this, there is the idea, like the idea of a right to privacy, which we'll talk about when we get to Roe v. Wade, is implied, or at least according to more activist judicial philosophy, like there's an implication that there's some privacy, in unreasonable search and seizure, and so they kind of use that along with the Ninth Amendment and some others to get at that. All right, so there we go. No warrant without probable cause. All right, Fifth Amendment. All right, I have a terrible hook. It's the best I can come up with. I apologize. If you got something better, tell me. There are five things in this, so if we could make an acronym, that'd be great. But I don't know. Good sweep. The O's and the E's don't count, only the consonants. Okay, so maybe we just have a really bad acronym for one of these that actually works. So on the backside, write good sweep going down. This is a really long one. It has all to do with mostly judicial things, and then like a random addition at the bottom. But no person shall be held for an answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime. By the way, capital means that you could be executed for it. So this is a very serious crime, like murder. There are other things you can be executed for in our history. In a lot of our history, if you committed rape, you could be actually executed or otherwise infamous crime, unless on presentation of indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising from naval and land forces or in the militia when in actual service of time of war or public danger. So, like, you can be shot without a grand jury in the military during war if you don't follow orders or something. So there are some exceptions. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. So you can't be prosecuted for the same offense twice. There is an exception to that if you actually don't get acquitted, like there's just a hung jury, like they can't come to a decision, they can actually prosecute you again with a new jury. But if you are acquitted 12-0, say you are innocent or at least not guilty, you can be prosecuted again. But generally speaking, you can't be prosecuted again. Like OJ Simpson, never to be prosecuted again for that murder. Nor shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself, or be deprived of life, liberty, property, without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Meaning that last one's weird because all these other things have to do with like criminal stuff, and then all of a sudden like they drop in like just compensation for private property. Again, I guess that's due process. That's probably why it's in there. But anyway, all right, flip over. All right, so here's the things. Grand jury and capital case. So grand jury comes before a regular jury. So basically, it's just an extra check to make sure the government's not like railroading somebody. They have to check a grand jury, make sure there's enough evidence for there actually to be a jury trial. So that's why that's there. Due process must happen before loss of life, liberty, property. Like you have a right to, a court and a hearing and, hear your accusation, witnesses, all that stuff. Same offense, no double jeopardy. Like you can't have the same offense. They can't just keep trying you over and over again, hoping for a jury to finally convict you. That's called double jeopardy clause. Witness against oneself. You can't be a witness against yourself, which means you have a right to remain silent. That's going to be in Miranda. We'll talk about that case. And private property compensation. You have a right to just compensation if the government needs to use your land for a military base or a road or some civic reason. All right, there's that. Study that. It's not an easy one. Sixth Amendment. All right, six speedy. That's our big hook. Six speedy. Six speedy. What speedy? What speedy trial? Six speedy trial. Six speedy trial. SS. Six speedy trial. And then everything else has to do with trials. So remember that sixth speedy trial. Everything else has to do with trials. All right, cool. All criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed by the nature and cause of the accusation. So you need to know why what you're being accused of. You have a right to know that. To be confronted with witnesses against him. So like you have the right to see the witnesses that are actually saying what they're saying. They can't like secretly say what you're being accused of, and then you never actually get to confront them. To have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in your favor. That means that you can subpoena people to come be defense witnesses, even if they don't want to. And have the assistance of counsel for defense. So the counsel means lawyer. You have a right to lawyer. Counsel, lawyer. All right, cool. Backside. Speedy and public trial by impartial jury in the district or state where it happened. That's also in Article 3, by the way. We saw that when it talked about Supreme Court. So it's kind of a restatement of that. You get to know your accusation. You get to be confronted with witnesses. They can't do secretive witnesses. And by the way, they could potentially videotape a witness and have that be evidence, but you have a right to have your lawyer there to confront them. So they have to be questioned. Compel witnesses for your defense, so you can subpoena people, make them come in, even if they don't want to, in the assistance of a lawyer, which we call counsel. All right? All right, good. That's really good. All right, cool. Six speedy. Six speedy trial. All right, seventh is really short. Think 7 times 3 is 21. So 7 times 3, 21. 7 times 3, 21. The reason I say that is because this says you have a right to a jury trial if the amount you're being sued for is $20 or is above $20. So 7 times 3 is 21. $21 is a cutoff. Now all of a sudden you got a jury trial, or at least a right to one. So yeah, jury trial. In suits at common law. And that means when it says at common law, that means like civil trial. That means you're suing someone for money, not because of a crime. Like, you sued me because I didn't have insurance and I bumped into your car, and now it cost you money to get your car fixed. And so therefore you're suing me for that. Where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of the trial by jury shall be preserved. No fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. So, like, no fact tried by a jury. So, like, if a court if a case gets appealed, facts can't be changed on appeal. Facts have to be the same when the appeal is looked at. All right, 7 times 3 is 21. So 7 amendment, 7 times 3 is 21. Anything above $20, you have a right to a jury trial, which seems silly now. I mean, $20 was actually some serious money in 1789, but now we look at it and go like, yeah, sure. Nothing. All right, cool. We're done on the Eighth Amendment. Eighth Amendment is another one that gets, it's very important, but it gets forgotten. So the hook is not great, but it works. 8x. That's what we're going to say. 8x. 8x. Almost like you're doing a math, algebra or something. But why do we say 8x? We say 8x because no excessive bail. X excessive. X excessive. No 8 excessive. 8x excessive. All right. No excessive bail. No excessive fines. No cruel and unusual punishment. You can see the actual amendment itself is very short. Okay, pause if you need to write. Thank you. Moving on. Ninth Amendment in the 10th Amendment kind of go together. They're like protecting rights that aren't otherwise mentioned, pretty much. And I have a hook for that. And it's kind of like the three soldiers in with two guns. This is 9 people in 10 states. 9 people, 10 states. 9 has to do with the people's rights, and then 10 has to do with states' rights. So 9 people in 10 states, 9 people, people rights, 10 states, state rights. Okay, that's the two things right there. Okay, cool. So let's do the ninth. Rights not specifically mentioned in the Constitution are retained by the people. So there's other rights other than the Bill of Rights. And it's just saying, like, don't assume that just because we didn't mention it, the people don't have a right to it. Let me read the actual amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution, the writing of in the Constitution of certain rights, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others that are retained by the people. So if there's like a tradition in America that you have a right to something, then therefore you still have that right. Cool. All right, that's done. It's rock and roll. It's easy. All right, make sure pause it if you need to. 10th Amendment, we've done this before. We know that this is the States' Rights Amendment. And basically, any power not delegated to the federal government directly is reserved to the states. Now, we've talked about how the government has used really grants specifically to meddle in things that were meant to be only state rights. For example, education. The federal government says, "Oh, you want a grant, state? Well, you must do a Common Core, or you must do No Child Left Behind if you want money from the federal government." And the states are like, "Yes, yes, yes, please give me money." And then they're dealing in something and regulating something that's meant to be a state power, not a federal government power. So powers not delegated to federal government are reserved to the states. So the powers not delegated nor prohibited to the states are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So there are state powers that are prohibited to the states, like interstate commerce. That's directly prohibited, and it's delegated. So if it's not specifically given to the federal government, like education, then it's reserved to the states. All right, great. You need to study these. There are sorts online. There's a millionaire online. That will be an assignment as part of what we're doing. So make sure you go through these, practice them. Really, really, really focus on 4, 5, and 6. Those are the hardest ones. 4, 5, and 6. Study. I've shown you how to do that. You know how to do it. Do a good job. Bye.